It's showtime, folks.
Breaking Bad is widely considered the greatest television program ever made. The characters, the commitment to change, cinematography, and its unique style. It is really hard to think of another show that defies the rules of filmmaking, acting, and scriptwriting. Except for Better Call Saul, obviously. For those of you who don't know, Better Call Saul follows the story of Jimmy McGill, a struggling lawyer who works cases as a public defender for guilty clients, and its transformation into the personality of the flamboyant criminal lawyer Saul Goodman. Jimmy is inspired to turn his life around from his past conman approach, where he was known as Slipping Jimmy from his older brother Chuck McGill, a senior partner alongside Howard Hamlin in the Albuquerque law firm Hamlin McGill, as well as Kim Wexler, one of the firm's legal associates who becomes Jimmy's romantic interest. Jimmy's the kind of man who fakes a secretary's voice when he answers his own phone, has an office that's basically a store cupboard in the back of a nail salon, and he's very much living in the shadow of his older brother Chuck, which is inconvenient, as Chuck seems to be in the middle of a breakdown. Chuck is a far more successful lawyer, but he's on the extended leave of absence, stuck in his own home protecting himself against what he believes to be electromagnetic forces. Jimmy even has to leave his phone outside the house and ground himself to discharge static electricity before coming in. The cast is wonderful, especially the supporting players, starting with Mark Ehrmantraut, the ex-cop turned fixer who's so prominent on the show that he functions as a co-protagonist, as he performs the tedious work of surveillance and sabotage with barely a word of dialogue for minutes at times. Then we have Jimmy's girlfriend and business partner Kim Wexler, who is a marvel of restraint. She is intelligent, determined, hardworking. We also see that she has a very special relationship with Jimmy McGill. She's the only one who seems to truly know Jimmy. She loves him, and just as Mike, she steals every scene she's in, almost making us forget the show is not about her, especially in later seasons. The rest of the cast, from Howard Hamlin to mild-mannered drug dealer Nacho Varga, and of course the super freaky Gus Fring, all make the most of their screen time. Now that we established the background and where the story comes from, we can address the biggest strength of this series that makes its writing so excellent, and these are the characters. We will look at the characters and the way they're written, presented to us, and the main visual storytelling techniques used in the expression of character. Gilligan understands that story comes from character, so he develops characters who can give endless stories, who have enough complexity and internal logic that they can twist and turn and surprise and still remain in character. Well-conceived characters are icebergs. We, the viewers, see about 10% of the whole. Most of what the writer knows about them lies beneath the surface, and it's these details that cause complex, interesting characters to act the way they do. Saul Goodman is one such creation. I can think of another TV series that goes deep into the creation of character, and this is Lost. I explained this in another video, but Lost is all about characters and our slow discovery of each one of them through flashbacks. We slowly understand the motivations of their actions as we get to know them better through these flashbacks. These shades of characters become the foundation for the development of the story itself, and in many cases in Lost, it becomes the start and solution of many of its mysteries. We can see this from the impossible life and death scenarios the characters are put through, and they continually survive not through some random act of God, but from seeing an opportunity where no one else did, through deal-making and fast thinking, through chemistry. Solutions came from character and story logic. In the world Gilligan created, they made sense. One of the characteristics of this brilliant writing of these quirky characters is that they have quirky backgrounds. And Goodman's background is as quirky as it can get. If you're creating a hardened, cynical cop or detective, there needs to be a background that reflects his current state. Something made him develop a cynical worldview. Goodman works well as a sketchy lawyer because he grew up as a con artist. This character, he's believable as sleazy, because that's a part of who he is. He'll go so far as to stage a film publicity stunt as his billboard is taken down, allowing him the opportunity to save a man's life. However the character appears, the writers commit to his background. Gilligan spends the time actually writing and developing the background, even if sometimes something never makes it into the story. Another important aspect of writing a great character is the moment of growth. One of the primary storylines of the first season involves the Kettlemans. Craig Kettleman has been accused of embezzling $1.6 million as the former county treasurer. Knowing the Kettlemans have the embezzled funds, Jimmy asks Mike to steal the money, and while slipping Jimmy may have split the cash with his partner, Jimmy decides to turn the money over to the police and tell the Kettlemans that their money is gone. He gets Craig to accept the plea deal, resurrecting Kim's career even if it sets back his own. By showing Jimmy at one of the lowest points in his life, there's room for him to grow as a lawyer. Going against his character and nature gives us a reason to root for Jimmy. A character shouldn't remain static. The creator of the show don't tell us to care about Jimmy McGill or start to sympathize with Mike Ehrmantraut. They allow us to see them in action, good and bad, and we can't help but become endeared to them in the process. Better Call Saul has very human characters that do things that make sense for them to do, not just what the plot needs next. The show doesn't paint its characters in black and white. It's hard to identify a real villain for the show. The show often lets us see and consider both sides of an issue. Similarly, Kim and Jimmy's relationship is one that is given very little exposition. We don't know much about their history together or even their current status, but we don't need to because we're shown as much as we need to know to care about them. And I love how subtle the show makes it. You don't need to see them in bed together to know how they're committed and care about each other. And this is beautifully transmitted to us even in their moments of silence. Better Call Saul is endlessly drawing me in, making me think, what's going on inside that character's head? In this scene, Chuck shows Jimmy how to peel tape off of his wall so that the wood doesn't get damaged.
Jimmy, if you're gonna help, at least use a little finesse.
Finesse? What do you...
Well, just quit yanking at it. You're pulling the varnish right off the walnut.
Pull any varnish off the walnut.
There certainly are. Look. See?
Well, maybe you should have thought about the friggin' walnut before you covered it in duct tape.
I don't need your help. I don't recall ever asking for it.
Sorry, okay? Finesse, fine. Show me. Demonstrate.
Like this. Gently roll it with your thumbs. Left and then right. See? Alternate the thumbs. Up and down. Get a nice tight roll.
Jimmy
going.
would rather rip it off quickly, but Chuck is careful, methodical, and precise, highlighting the differences between the two brothers. Nevertheless, Jimmy is willing to learn Chuck's method and apply it. The next episode, this happens.
Even failing that, its probative value doesn't outweigh how prejudicial it is. I think we can get the whole thing bounced under 403. Probably get it excluded outright.
So much is communicated about Jimmy's unconscious desire to fit into his brother's mold and his conscious rebellion against that. Another important concept mentioned in Better Call Saul regarding character is the concept that good characters can do bad things and bad characters can do good things. There is one beautiful scene where Mike explains this.
The lesson is, if you're going to be a criminal, do your homework.
Wait, I'm not a bad guy.
I didn't say you're a bad guy. I said you're a criminal.
What's the difference?
I've known good criminals and bad cops, bad priests, honorable thieves. You can be on one side of the law or the other. But if you make a deal with somebody, you keep your word. You can go home today with your money and never do this again. But you took something that wasn't yours, and you sold it for a profit. You're now a criminal. Good one, bad one, that's up to you.
Just because a character is ultimately lumped into the realm of protagonism or antagonism, good guy or bad guy, does not mean they can't surprise you. We see that with Nacho, that ends up convincing Tuco not to kill Jimmy when he tried to scam his mother by mistake. As we find out, Nacho is not a good person, but he does a good thing here. On the flip side, Jimmy's brother, Chuck, is made out to be a fairly important protagonist through the majority of the season. Only in episode 9, we find out that Chuck is the reason Jimmy never gets hired at his firm. The reason isn't exactly nice.
You're not a real lawyer.
I'm what?
You're not a real lawyer. University of American Samoa, for Christ's sake? An online course? What a joke. I worked my ass off to get where I am. And you take these shortcuts and you think suddenly you're my peer? You do what I do because you're funny and you can make people laugh? I committed my life to this. You don't slide into it like a cheap pair of slippers and then reap all the rewards.
I thought you were proud of me.
I know you. I know what you were, what you are. People don't change. You're Slippin' Jimmy. And Slippin' Jimmy I can handle just fine, but Slippin' Jimmy with a law degree is like a chimp with a machine gun. The law is sacred. If you abuse that power, people get hurt. This is not a game. You have to know, on some level, I know you know I'm right. You know I'm right.
The show establishes itself from the start as being more interested in the quieter, slower workings of the characters and the world. It gives the characters the time and the space they need to live, breathe, and grow. The pace is slow, deliberate, and in the case of Mike's scenes, almost meditative. Each decision these characters make, to take on a security job, to undermine a brother, to go into business with a boyfriend, brings Jimmy McGill one step closer to becoming Saul Goodman, criminal attorney. The series' calmer pace gives you the false hope that the descent of Jimmy and the rise of Saul can be avoided. Every inch of Better Call Saul is focused on showing us how and why these characters succeed on a microscopic level, and that attention to detail is present in the very construction of the show. Every single decision in the making of the show is made deliberately, and the montages come to use here, being part of the iconic look and structure of the show. They're used to move us through time quickly, being in contrast with the sometimes slow pace of the show. And here is an example of this from Mike's scenes. His story is told almost entirely visually and uses editing as its narrator. Its careful study of how a character goes about their business taken to a whole other level. The first thing it does is establish the scene. Then we see the sneakers coming into the scene. We don't know what Mike's is doing there. All we know is that he puts these sneakers on this telephone wire and that he puts drugs in them.
Quizás son cazadores.
We eventually understand that Mike's plan was to trick them into thinking shots were coming from hunters, letting them lower their guard so that he could shoot at the shoes, releasing the drugs from within so that they could get stopped by the border patrols. All these characters might seem different from each other, but they have one thing in common, and that is their obsession and addiction to their jobs, which is why it makes so much sense to deliver information through these tightly focused sequences. This concept is visually expressed in this montage.
It's showtime, folks.
Kill him.
Your Honor, I'm very sorry. I'll never do it again.
Say what? Your Honor, I'm very sorry, and I'll never do it again.
Okay, Mr. Pearson.
Jimmy is showing off the public defender's life. It's repetitive, tedious, and a ton of work, but that's what a public defender is. As the montage continues, it speeds up, and it's getting tougher and tougher for Jimmy to go on.
Parents are a train wreck. There's no food in the house. He was hungry. Come on.
Light on stickers.
Come on.
$5.
You serious?
You got 4, you need 5.
There's 4 90-minute stickers there.
You've been here 6 hours and 5 minutes.
It takes 10 minutes to walk down here.
$5 or you go get another sticker.
The line, "It's showtime," is a reference to another famous montage from the film All That Jazz, a movie about a director who literally worked himself to death.
It's showtime, folks. It's from a movie.
And we can see that hard work in this other montage too. The idea of hard work not paying off is clear, as there's no progression and we see Jimmy doing the same thing over and over. This montage shows us where Jimmy started and some of the reasons he might have turned to the dark side. I have one last montage that shows character. The character of Jimmy, Chuck, and Kim, just through editing and cinematography. Here, Jimmy and Kim are set to defend his bar license against his brother Chuck, and interestingly, the montage plays out not over music but over the opening statement of the trial, and follows the two as they prepare.
Mr. McGill certainly knew that breaking down his brother's door was criminal behavior. 16-804. Committing a criminal act that reflects
We
adversely
follow them all the way from getting ready at home to their entrance into the courtroom, and each shot tells us something about their relationship and personality. They're framed united visually, marching into the building. The traffic cones are a symbol of danger and caution, and we know they're there to accommodate Chuck, reminding us of the advantage he holds over them. Even still, they rise up the stairs to meet the challenge and enter together. The whole sequence shows us their status as a team. Just 10 minutes later, Chuck arrives, and the courtroom prepares for his arrival by removing electricity and therefore darkening the scene. Those traffic cones from earlier show the danger that he brings, and as Chuck climbs the stairs, we watch him from behind, the opposite angle of Jimmy and Kim. From these two montages, we can see these two parties as opponents, light versus darkness, and the power disparity between them is obvious. Wide shots are used to an amazing effect. In most shows, and even in many movies these days, wide shots serve simply as an establishing shot, but Better Call Saul, probably more than any other show I've ever seen, uses them to their full potential. In addition to establishing places and settings, super wide shots communicate a sense of aloneness. Some of the comedic scenes with Jimmy and the brilliant silent investigative scenes with Mike Ehrmantraut feel like they could come from two different kinds of shows. But the scenes never clash with each other. The comedy never feels out of place and the drama doesn't feel too dark. It's a balancing act propelled by logical writing that serves the story instead of the genre. Finally, I want to mention tension, which might be slightly off topic, but I just wanted to talk about it because it is done so beautifully. It is another strong element of the series that is a consequence of these wonderfully written characters. I have one perfect example of stress and tension, where dialogue is very little and the visual does most of the work.
More espresso?
I don't know about you guys, but this is the most stressed I've ever felt watching TV. Better Call Saul is a show that has frequently been identified as living a double life. The Mike Show and the Jimmy Show, and sometimes even the Kim Show and the Nacho Show. Everyone has its space and time, and sometimes you forget that Jimmy is the protagonist. Where Breaking Bad was about taking you on a journey of learning to hate a character as they become completely evil, Better Call Saul is about showing you the past of someone we already know will become corrupt, and making us feel sympathetic for that character by showing us what made him become Saul Goodman, and the story of a bad man desperately trying to break good.
Did I dream it? Or did I have $1,600,000 on my desk in cash?
I remember you saying something about doing the right thing.
Well, I know what stopped me. You know what? It's never stopping me again.